My temperament is such that when things seem easy, I distrust it, you know. With every book, I push myself. I push myself very hard, you know. When I finished Sea of Poppies, I thought it was impossibly difficult. It just seemed very, very challenging, and I really had to push myself hard. But then River of Smoke was even more so, even more challenging, and you know, it took an enormous effort. You know, I had to literally give it my all.
I would be a little embarrassed to sort of easily accept that, you know, the real turning point of what's happening is just because of the God of Small Things. I think there's a whole lot of things that are happening at this time, and I mean, surely the God of Small Things is a part of it, you know. But how did I come to write it? Just in the way writers do, you know. I just decided that it was something that I had, you know, had wanted to do, I think more subconsciously than consciously, for a long time.
The Indian novel has changed. The Indian novel in English has changed from Rushdie's time, from the time of Midnight's Children until today's time. And I think Midnight's Children and Rushdie, he immediately had a different attitude.
I certainly do believe that Salman Rushdie's talent and Midnight's Children's startling difference from what had gone before began to make Indian literature what it is in the world today.
Rushdie did was to bring back into English fiction that kind of picaresque, rumbustious scale which we had seen in the 18th century, but which had gradually petered out post-Dickens. So I do think he's quite a historically important writer. Whether those who've come after him will be recognised in time as having the same historical importance, I frankly rather doubt.
I've only written 3 novels and a collection of short stories. The bulk of my books are in fact non-fiction. But my 3 novels, I suppose, place me more in the camp of the literary novelist than of the mass market novelist. I'm proud that my first novel, The Great Indian Novel, is today, in 2010, in its 33rd edition.
There's been a vacuum here, I think, in British literature for the past 20 years. And actually into that space has poured the Indian novel. First with Salman, hugely important book. But I think perhaps, funnily enough, the second wave of that was started by Arundhati Roy, her novel God of Small Things. And of course what was important about Arundhati, I mean lots of things are important about Arundhati's book, but one, of course, she lived in Delhi. And Salman by that time was living here.
Possibly to me the division is pre-God of Small Things and post-God of Small Things in terms of the way the world perceived Indian fiction. Arundhati Roy and God of Small Things said it is done. It has been done by somebody living in India, writing out of India with no great sort of pedigree of connections across the globe.
Things that fiction can do is to bring you, it can bring you the news, but it can also take you into a world that you know nothing about. And one of the great things fiction can do is that. And India, of course, is an extraordinarily large, various country with an enormous number of different aspects to it, all of which to some degree are fascinating and interesting. And so for British readers, and I guess the same is true for Spanish readers, Italian readers, American readers, there is something sort of wonderful about visiting in fiction a place that you may never actually visit in.
I call myself an accidental writer. When I was writing it, I knew that I was onto a good thing. In the sense, I knew that the plot was fresh and the narrative structure was unique. Because I was trying to reveal the private life of my protagonist through the public spectacle of a quiz show. But still, I thought what I had written was a very Indian novel. A novel which did not try to exoticize India. And I thought this would be something which only Indian readers would be able to relate to. So it has come as a pleasant surprise to me that readers in so many different countries have been able to relate to my novel.
Incredible and imposing tradition of narrative and storytelling, which has been going on for, close to 5,000 years in India, and which is slowly coming into the West.
India is a microcosm of the world. The world is changing so fast, and India within itself contains several of the last centuries, and it is also a window into the future.
The world's readers are today looking at India as a literary powerhouse. And this is only when we are talking of Indian writing in English. The Indian writing in other language is still relatively unexplored. And I wonder what will happen when all that comes out into English through translation and you have a really big explosion.
What's happened is that I think we have found our confidence in our language, and what's happening is this kind of explosion with literature, and I feel in a way that we have taken that language of English and made it our own.
Now there's an interest in Indian culture. Yes, there is. There is, and more people are writing about it. So, but there is a great interest in things Indian, and this is just an aspect of it.
Well, curiously, I believe culture always rides on the tailcoat of economic efflorescence. So a lot of this acceptance of Indian culture and by extension Indian writing has to do with the fact that we are becoming economically a very, very significant power in the world.
Today, the Indian voice, and not only necessarily in English, but people are equally interested, I think, in translations that are coming out of all kinds of languages across the length and breadth of India.
It's a combination of the traditional strengths of Indian writers and the increasing awareness of foreigners of India.
The writing is sort of going back to India, by which I mean that writers are writing in India and they're not necessarily writing for an audience.
As Indians, we have so many stories to tell. We have families with a whole lot of turmoil going on inside them. We also have so many states with their own peculiarities and their own little nuances and details which are today appealing so much to the Western audience.
Writing in a more Indian way. Now, of course, the fact that we write in a more Indian way, less self-consciously, let's say, has an effect also on the diaspora,